Welcome to the Vision by Protiviti podcast. I'm Joe Kornik, Editor-in-Chief of Vision by Protiviti, our global content resource examining big themes that will impact the C-suite and executive boardrooms worldwide. Today, we're exploring insurance in a metaverse future, and we've got great guests to help us do that, as we're joined by Protiviti insurance experts and managing directors Shawn Seasongood and Tom Luick, as well as director Jackie Simmons. And I'm happy to turn over the interviewing duties today to another Protiviti colleague, Alex Weishaupl, a managing director in Protiviti's digital practice, to lead this important discussion. Alex, over to you to begin.
Thanks, Joe. When we talk about the metaverse at Protiviti, we're talking about both the customer-facing technologies that enable user experiences, those virtual reality or mixed reality technologies that users engage with via screens or advanced headsets, and how they serve as interfaces to a host of enabling tech made up of everything from decentralized systems like blockchain to more traditional systems and data stores. The key to all of this is interoperability, that these systems come together to power compelling experiences for their consumers. Excited to be here today with Tom, Jackie, and Shawn so we can talk about the metaverse and how this group of technologies and ways of engaging users are poised to affect the insurance industry. Let's get started. My first question for the group is, what are some of the key issues you see in the current insurance customer experience, and how might the metaverse help to address any of those issues or those gaps?
Thanks, Alex. I'll take that first. So I think, there's a lot, insurance companies have really been looking at, two different models. There's been the legacy model, which is more of an agent sales experience, and there's also the direct model. I do think that, there's a lot of benefits from the legacy agent sales experience. But if you look at the way that companies are marketing themselves, there's much more consumers that want to go direct. And I think the metaverse could offer an experience that maintains that personal feel-to-face interactions in a digital model. So, thinking about in the future when you're able to introduce more visually engaging ways to help buyers understand product features and trade-offs, this could be a great way where companies could really start to enhance their direct channels and their efforts around direct selling. Me personally, I've experienced this recently. I purchased a golf cart in December. My first thought was to go to my traditional agent that does my homeowners and car and see if I could add a golf cart policy. Well, my particular agent didn't have that policy and asked me that, I could buy it directly online. So I did my fair share of research. I thought I was pretty astute when it came to this topic. And even, looking at some of the direct options I had, I was a little bit unsure as far as what kind of coverage I needed. Do I need collision plus liability? I'm in a flood zone, so I need to have a flood insurance as well. So at the end of the day, I actually didn't buy the policy direct, and I went to another agent that actually offered golf cart insurance, and it was a pretty good experience. Spent 15 minutes with the agent. I was able to secure the right type of insurance, but I walked away knowing that, spending 15 minutes with the person, the total premium was probably around $300. And it was, something that I thought that if that direct model had that enhanced feel and that experience that you might be able to get through a meta solution, I think that you could see where, companies are going to be spending a lot more time enhancing their capabilities in this space, again, to achieve that agent sales experience using sort of a meta sort of enhancement. So I kind of felt it firsthand as far as what the current experience is versus what that experience might look like in the next 5 to 10 years.
I think another component there, customer experience is critical for all companies. Insurance companies are not different. But there is a cost impact that is higher to some organizations from a customer experience. So there are a lot of costs associated with agency models, and the ability to leverage alternative models of delivery can help from the cost side, as well as enhance the customer experience. And so bringing both of those together. Another example would be potentially in an employee benefits type of scenario, right? So typically you're sending a lot of folks on site to an organization to help train and understand all the types of benefits that are available to them. The use of metaverse technologies could actually streamline that and bring down the costs associated with it in order to deliver even advanced solutions, as well as potentially increase the amount of sales that are happening within the employee benefits space, just by giving them a different way of learning and engaging.
That's great. And it sounds like there are some real substantive areas where the metaverse might be able to improve, for lack of a better term, that sales and onboarding process within the insurance industry. I'd love to talk a little bit about other areas that could be impacted as well. And I think, for example, an area like claims processing, which has historically been an area of friction for both policyholders and the insurance provider alike. What kind of changes could we expect in that process in a metaverse enabled future?
Yeah, thanks, Alex. This is Tom. I'll jump in here and go first. So I think how a claim is processed, from the timeliness and quality of communication to how long it takes to complete the claim, and for example, in the auto space, have your automobile fixed, to the ultimate payout, is really critical, right, to the customer's experience with the carrier. And if the claim's not handled to the customer's satisfaction, there's a good chance that the customer may leave. So when I think about the impact of the metaverse in the claims process, I think about things like, how could digital twins accelerate the process end to end, and make the process more intimate and more aligned with a customer's preferences and expectations. So, for example, if a customer had a digital twin, that digital twin could have preferences on how that customer wants to be communicated to, what's the style of communication, how frequently they want to be communicated to, and what's the platform. And I think that's critical throughout the claims process. So if you are, again, sticking with the auto accident, if you're in an auto accident, I think one of the most important things your insurer can do is communicate to you effectively in a way that you want to be communicated to. Or the automobiles themselves could have digital twins that could use, IoT sensor data and other information, telematics data, et cetera, to better predict the damage that was done to the vehicles and avoid surprises in the repair shop process. And then I think finally you could think about what about the repair shop, right? So if repair shops were to have digital twins, maybe that would help predict the best place for specific repairs to go. And that could be based on the workload at the repair shop, their experience, how customer review data aligns with the specific insured's preferences, and other factors. So I think there's a really significant opportunity for insurance carriers to leverage the metaverse in the claim space. And while we're probably not there yet, you'd have to build out all of these digital twins and so forth. I really think this is a fascinating opportunity for the industry to really improve the customer experience where it truly does matter most.
Tom, that is an excellent point on having a digital twin of a car. I would say this also is a potential to open up for new products, because as the parent of a recent 16-year-old, I would certainly pay more to have access to a digital twin of my son's driving in the car, and maybe in the way it's utilized, right? Thankfully, they didn't have this technology when I was a kid. I probably would have gotten my car taken away a few times. But as a parent, safety of our family is critical, and I think this does open up opportunity for products that we haven't even thought about.
I think that's really exciting, that idea of kind of taking all of that insurance data and processes and decisions kind of out of that black box so that more folks can see it, whether, Tom, as you were alluding to, the customers or the partners, Jackie with employees and others, that notion that rather than having all of this information sitting in one place versus another, that ability to combine them together and visualize that so that all of the different players are looking at the same information from the same perspective is a really exciting way of opening up transparency and confidence in the overall process. I'd love to shift a little bit now to the employee experience. That there's, we know that there's a big turnover currently in talent across the insurance industry that we're going through right now, a bit of almost a generational changing of the guard. What do you see as some of the key causes for that turnover? And are there any places where the metaverse could help?
Yeah, this is an interesting thing. And I think maybe I'm an interesting person to answer this question because I started my career as an actuary. And, that was probably 5 years and I was quickly out, right? And we are probably not seeing as many individuals going into the actuarial space as we had historically. I think we're not seeing as many young grads wanting to move into the insurance space, not just in actuarial science, but also, in claims, even agents, right? We're not seeing the attachment to being an insurance agent having the stature that it did probably 20 to 30 years ago. And so I think that utilizing emerging technologies such as the metaverse can start to entice young professionals into the insurance space.
I agree, Jackie. I think, omni-channel e-commerce is already happening for a lot of people, right? And that the demographic that's involved in that is growing quickly, and so is its economic power, right? As they become more lucrative in their careers and so forth. So I think now is the time for insurance companies to start testing and learning in the metaverse. And that can be a huge attraction for young talent for these organizations, which rightly or wrongly are often perceived as not being very innovative. So I think there's a real opportunity to use this as a mechanism to start attracting talent, to show that a lot of these insurance companies are actually innovating and innovating at a high pace in an area that's, I think, going to be extremely important to their futures. So there is an opportunity here to leverage the metaverse to attract and retain the type of talent that insurance carriers and others in the industry, brokers and so forth, are looking for.
Yeah, and there's been no doubt that this has been a huge issue, talent in the industry, probably for the last 10 to 15 years, just based on the points that both Jackie and Tom are alluding to. It was a big problem before the pandemic. It became an increasingly bigger problem after the pandemic with the Great Resignation. So how do we attract that next generation of insurance leadership has been something that the industry has been struggling with. So I do think, as Tom and Jackie alluded to, the product development, if you have the opportunity to kind of look at these new interesting risks in the form of digital assets, that might attract some people who traditionally might not have found insurance that interesting, or who went to the different banks or different financial services companies. It might be a way of kind of getting that talent back into the insurance space. And I think a lot of it has been talked about training. We talked about training the last time around claims. Like, within the metaverse, there is an opportunity to kind of digitally show employees what to look for in an aftermath of sort of a building or a big cat event. You can't, insurer doesn't stimulate huge events like fires and tornadoes in real time or the real world. It's just too costly, too expensive. And we talked about, if there's a big cat, the first time people are looking at these claim files or these claim events or the damage, you want them to be well trained as far as what to do. A lot of times, the newer generations, they want to work remotely, so they've already kind of deployed things like drones, where they're able to take pictures based on different property damage, and then based on that imagery, you're able to kind of show people how to adjudicate these claims. And to the point that we talked about before, that might result in a more effective, more efficient claim adjudication process, and that the underlying result will be a happier customer or policyholder that would be more likely to become a return customer. So I do think the metaverse, is very, very important as far as attracting that next wave of talent. It is a big issue that the industry has been struggling with for the last 15 years. And I think it could be one of the solutions when it comes to both training and also attracting that next talent of insurance leadership.
One question I have for you, building on that, really excited about this theme of using these innovations as a way of creating more of a halo effect for the insurance industry to attract that new talent. I guess one of the other things I'm curious about within that space of the employee experience, does the insurance space struggle with consistency around things like claims and other things? Could we see this to the point that you started to allude to, Shawn, around experiential learning? Could that have an effect too on kind of normalizing or making more consistent processes, or is that already fairly well taken care of within the insurance space?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think around risk acceptance and underwriting practices. Sometimes there is some subjectivity to that. I think the data that you can power from the meta could actually help to drive that consistency. I look at other things like the sales cycle. Obviously, those are other areas where the meta could collect data and kind of harvest that data in a way that is very powerful asset for the insurance company of the future. I mean, most startup insurance companies are focusing first on data and data management and data science as sort of their starting point as far as what is that insurance company of the future. Specifically, I think, and it's not just within the P&C space. I think the life insurance company has the same type of focus. So I definitely feel like that's an area to drive more consistency. To your point, to drive better outcomes for the insurance industry as a whole.
I think that's a good point. And it would probably add just that not only is consistency important from an operational excellence perspective and a customer experience perspective, but there's also an opportunity here to manage compliance risk through the consistent execution of underwriting decisions, claims process handling, et cetera.
So I think one of the challenges insurance companies have too is the ability to deploy talent across different lines and solutions. I think, Shawn, to your point on training, right, leveraging some of these technologies, it can do a few things. Younger generations really want to have a breadth of experiences. No, gone are the days where somebody wants to come in and retire from the job that they entered, right? We all want to have kind of those different experiences. So leveraging the metaverse for training can quickly get new grads, mid careers, late careers, up to speed more quickly, either in other products or other processes. That'll give the company a few benefits, right? One is the cost of talent has significantly increased. If you can leverage the talent that you have to do different types of roles, as well as cover cyclical types of business, right? So when you have a downtime in one business but an increase in another, you can leverage your same staff across those different processes or products. It also gives you the ability to rapidly grow talent into leadership roles within the organization, which we all are desperately looking for. So I think leveraging the metaverse within the talent space could be the biggest benefit to an organization.
That's great. And so far we've talked broadly about the customer experience and the employee experience. I'd love to get a little bit more specific or nuanced and hear a little bit about how you see this technology affecting how insurance companies might enable their different strategies, from ones that are more cost focused to product focused or relationship focused. How can we see the metaverse kind of unlocking different strategies for those different types of insurance companies?
Yeah, I think, this is a really great point for everyone to stop and reflect in this podcast. Where is your organization and where do they lean in, right? So if your organization goes to market mostly on a cost basis, how do you leverage the metaverse to increase value while reducing costs, right? If you are a product forward organization, what are ways that you leverage the metaverse to create new products, to have differentiating products that your competitors cannot and will not be able to keep up with you? And Thirdly, if you are a relationship strategy organization, how do you make meaningful, deep relationships through the metaverse, which sounds challenging for sure, but how do you create those deep relationships that are meaningful to someone without maybe sitting across the desk face to face, and create longevity with those clients, and stickiness, if you will, on their returning business and future business.
Yeah, I agree. I think I think there are use cases across the value chain for the industry to take advantage of with the metaverse. And I really agree with Jackie's point in that it's not one size fits all. You really need to think about what is it that our organization, to use Jackie's words, is going to lean into and prioritize those areas. So, for example, if you're an organization that leverages an agent experience pretty heavily, is there an opportunity in the sales cycle to leverage the metaverse? Maybe a customer will do some some online research, um, and have questions that come up, or have things that need to be resolved they don't understand, etc. Maybe there's an opportunity to have the metaverse as an interim step before that goes directly to the agent model or to an agent, where obviously the cost of that sales cycle now goes up because there's human involvement. So I think that there are opportunities throughout the cycle, but organizations are going to need to think about, where does this fit with our strategy? Where does this fit with the demographics of our customers? And how do we make it work for those who want to leverage the metaverse and have a more omni-channel experience with us, but also leave the door open for those who are going to buy or expect their claims to be processed, or their policy to be managed through more traditional means.
I agree with, and this is Shawn. I'll just add to what Jackie and Tom said, and I think they summed it up really well. But the one thing I also look at is, to Jackie's point, it's not a one size fit all, but also the flexibility, because it might be changing. It might change the way you use Meta to do, home or personalized might be different than the way you use Meta to do commercial. It might be different the way you do it for life and annuity. There's a lot of flexibility around this, and I could see the industry taking some time to really adopt to it. But I do think, when you look at product disbursement and also geo, there's going to be different strategies too. A lot of insurance companies now think globally and they sell products across the globe. And so what might work in North America might not be exactly what works in Europe. So there's got to be different ways of looking at it flexible. And there's going to be some trial and error. It's going to be something like any natural evolution where it's going to take some time to get it right. But I think the companies that invest in it early probably have a better path to being successful, because I do think there will be significant trial and error until this is really sort of streamlined and fit for purpose for all different organizations.
Shawn, you touch on a great point about how this is likely going to affect different types of insurance differently. I wonder if you guys might talk a little bit about how does that potential for change, or the speed of change, potentially differ for different types of insurance?
Well, I think there's ways of looking at it. I mean, I look at it differently. When it comes to metaverse, the whole, you know, everybody's going to be operating in the metaverse, not just insurance companies. It's going to be a way that we, function and operate going forward as a civilization. So, I mean, when you develop sort of those metaverse, that really, there's now new assets that need to be protected associated with working in a metaverse. So there's going to be virtual property insurance in the metaverse, where individuals can buy and own virtual land, building, and other assets. They'll have to be insured. Just like the real world, there'll be virtual goods in the metaverse. Individuals can purchase goods such as clothing, accessories, digital currencies. They will also have to have insurance products associated with that. Virtual events, whether they're concerts or sporting events, again, that's another event that is costly to organize, and therefore you'll have to protect against it in case it gets canceled or any other unforeseen circumstances. So I look at it, and also obviously cyber liability insurance, as more people spend time in the metaverse. there's an increased risk of cyber attacks, just like the world we live in today with the internet, and then obviously identity theft insurance. With the increase of virtual interactions, there's risk that somebody's identity there'll be the theft and fraud associated with somebody's metaverse identity. So all these different risks that are going to become they're evolving, and they'll become much more important. And again, anything that has value against it, and these things are predicted to have significant value against, will have to have different insurance products that will be able to help to be developed to protect that value going forward. So I look at that from sort of a P&C lens. I don't know if others within the call, they might be able to speak how they also see it. But I mean, I just think from a product development standpoint, it's going to be pretty dynamic, because the metaverse in itself is dynamic. So there's going to have to be some creative nuances developed within the marketplace to really protect against those assets, to protect those assets going forward.
Shawn, to your point earlier, if you don't know where to get golf cart insurance, I certainly don't know where to go if I want to protect the digital version of myself, right? Is it a traditional life insurance company, or does PNC carry, digital life, if you will? I think that will become a challenge. Is that something that's even insurable? And then the reality is there are a lot of fraudulent claims. Kind of to go back to a little bit of our point before in the claim side. Now, how do we even know what a fraudulent claim looks like against products that are really new to the market, and we don't have a lot of data on from a claims perspective? I think it really does kind of it has a lot of impact into all insurance companies. I think life is maybe a little different, and employee benefits might be a little different from a product perspective. But
yeah, I think Jackie brings up a good point too about we don't have 30 years of data associated with these new new products. So traditionally, insurance model is you take a lot of data through history, and you're able to price and sell the products pretty successfully, knowing what the future cost of the claims will be. It's going to be a little bit sticky as far as the first couple of years, as with these different pricing discussions around these digital assets, because we don't have the data to really kind of traditionally we'd have lots and lots of data before we make pricing decisions. So the pricing decisions around these will definitely be interesting to see how they evolve.
I think, yeah, I agree, Shawn. I think there's a learning curve similar to what we saw with the cyber insurance market, where, over time, things certainly tightened in that market significantly, as did the requirements placed on organizations to get a cyber policy in the first place. So I think we will see similar learning curves here, because the data is just not there to support the models yet. And people are going to probably, in some cases, find out that they were assuming more risk than they thought, based on how they priced things, and they'll have to adjust.
It's really fascinating thinking about this idea of the speed of technology change that we're living through, with an example, and not to put you on the spot, Shawn, but with an example of wanting data that goes back to maybe to 1993. That's a bit of kind of a funny discontinuity to think through of how you balance that rate of change and the inherent conservatism that's needed to have that data to be able to build good predictive models that go into insurance. So knowing that that's certainly one key constraint, I'd love to know from the team here, what are some of the other constraints you've observed that will likely slow the adoption of experience innovations like the metaverse?
Yeah, I think so. Technical debt is a substantial issue for many in the industry. And there's going to be a very significant investment required to capitalize on the opportunity of the metaverse and a lot of the other emerging technologies that are out there. So I think that is at a baseline issue for many in the industry. I think that there's some things in the metaverse that are also going to be challenging. So for example, I don't think it's as easy in the insurance industry to define your strategy for the metaverse and your goals as it may be in, say, for example, consumer products, because the products in insurance are different demographics are buying insurance, etc. Secondly, I think it's really going to be interesting to see how many of these organizations, especially carriers, balance the metaverse with the agent experience and other sales channels. I think that's going to be very important. As we mentioned earlier, this probably isn't one size fits all based on the products that you're selling and who's buying your products. So I think most carriers are going to have to really get comfortable that they understand their customer base well enough to make these types of decisions. And then I think another key challenge will be, what's the right platform in the metaverse for insurance carriers and brokers and others. And I think, right now there's organizations and other industries that are having success with gaming platforms. Is that really going to resonate with individuals who are buying insurance versus, say, buying clothing or other consumer products? I'm not sure. So really thinking through what's a platform that's going to resonate with our constituents and our customers and our potential customers is something that's not going to be easy for a lot of organizations in this industry to figure out.
I think it's important to remember that there are good and valid reasons why some organizations may not participate in the metaverse, or at least not immediately. There are, for example, in life insurance. A lot of life insurance organizations run 100-year liabilities, and sometimes they run those on systems that are 40, 50, 60 years old. And those products just may not make sense to implement. It's really important for an organization to step back, understand who they are in the marketplace and who they are as an organization, and say, where does implementing the metaverse make sense? If it's going to only get one kind of plug, maybe it's the employee experience. Maybe the customer experience is most important. It isn't something where organizations need to run full speed into all the different facets that they could implement the universe or the metaverse, because they may get so disparate in their efforts that nothing is leveraged to its full capacity and turned into a competitive advantage. And that's what this is really about. How do we leverage something in the metaverse as a competitive advantage for our organization? There just might be reasons why it's not the best place for all organizations to start right away.
Yeah. I guess I'll just end that, this is really early days about, the metaverse. The continuing expansion is going to happen. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. It's going to continue to, be significant shifts in the way that businesses and insurance companies use, the metaverse and its technology advancement. I do think it's early days. I do, think then, are we at sort of is this a similar situation in like when social media first came on ground? We might not yet foresee all the ethical, reputational, or legal risk associated with the metaverse. I immediately think of regulations and respect for social norms will be imperative, and insurers will have to ensure that these that people engage safely with all kinds of virtual experiences. So, the business of insurance is in the business of risk management. So, again, with early days of this metaverse, it will be very interesting to see where it goes. But I think a regulation is something that's going to be a challenge, because it's going to be how these products are regulated, how the metaverse in itself is regulated. I think is a little bit to be determined, and it'll be interesting to stay close to that. Again, I think of it like, close to 20 years ago when we first started getting social media, and how people and regulation has changed over time associated with that. So I think from an insurance companies, as companies continue to wrap and develop innovations, they're going to continue to offer products to protect against those innovations. And I think the industry in itself has spent a lot of time in building that trust with policyholders. And they've really worked hard to earn that trust of policyholders and consumers. And it will be interesting as these things evolve that they continue to evolve in the way that they can continue to ensure that trust in a dynamic world such as the metaverse.
That's great. And I think that that's really insightful as a way of looking at this domain. I guess kind of tying it now to the last question, we've talked a little bit through this around what might come in the future, whether that's future regulations, some future risks that may need to be insurable. I'd love to look a little bit further out, let's say 10 to 15 years from now. How do you see technologies like the metaverse more fundamentally potentially changing insurance and what's insurable? How are you and how is Protiviti looking at that notion of the future of asset protection?
It changes what's insurable in a few ways. One, there's going to be new things, right? New risks that need to be insured, as Shawn alluded to earlier. I also believe that with some of this information, the way that claims are adjudicated and paid will also potentially change. So, for example, we talked earlier about having digital twins for automobiles in the claims process in case there was an auto accident. I wonder, and I believe at some point, the way that the IoT data comes together, other information that gets pulled into the metaverse potentially, or is used in analytics around the accident, may have a big impact on how fault is determined for an accident. So I think that as we continue to see these models evolve and these organizations learn from them, I do think that there's going to be emphasis put on, is there information that we're gleaning from the metaverse that determines whether we should pay a claim or not on existing insurance, things that we insure regularly today. So I think that there's really those two different angles. One, what are the new things that we're going to need to insure, and what are the new risks that the metaverse and other emerging technologies create? And I think that's a really interesting opportunity for the industry. And then also, how do we leverage the metaverse to make sure that we are hopefully paying claims more fairly and more accurately and so forth. But it'll also have an impact on decision making in the claims process on current insurance as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the industry is really evolving in itself beyond the metaverse. I mean, if you think about 5-10 years from now, we'll have a lot less. We'll have driverless cars. That's going to be a big change in the industry. There's going to be a lot of uncertainty as far as future weather patterns and climate. That's also a big change that's probably going to happen within the industry. I look at things like crypto and people actually operating and exchanging money through cryptocurrencies and exchanges. That's also a big change in the industry. So I think the industry in itself is evolving. It's really hard to predict what it's going to look like in the next 5 to 10 to 15 years because of all the underlying changes. But you throw metaverse in there, it's another situation that's probably going to be I don't know if it'll be a disruptor, but it'll be definitely something that will be helping the insurance company of the future really kind of trying to manage these new and evolving risks. And it's going to be interesting to see how that all plays itself out. I mean, it really I've been in insurance now 20 years. I cannot see the next 10 to 15 years in insurance looking anything like it did the last 10 to 20 years. So it definitely seems to be part of the overall evolution. As far as I think more to come. Maybe even 2 years time we might have more clarity as far as how the metaverse will play. It definitely, we know it's going to play a big impact. I guess just to the extent and where it fits within all that evolution, I'm not sure.
This was a great conversation today. Thanks, Shawn, Jackie, Tom. Now back to you, Joe.
Thanks, Alex. And thank you for listening to the Vision by Protiviti podcast. Please be sure to rate and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't miss all the metaverse content we have at vision.protiviti.com. On behalf of Jackie, Tom, Shawn, and Alex, I'm Joe Kornik. We'll see you next time.